Hello everyone. Today we'll be doing a review of the Bowers & Wilkins P9, which I have right here. But we'll not be doing an ordinary review, but I'll be giving my thoughts on which difference does this headphone actually have over, for example, a $9 headphone or a $300 headphone. And how do I experience these differences? Because I've actually intensively tested the P9 against these two other headphones, and actually just switching them back and forth between my head a lot of times to actually hear what kind of difference this headphone actually has as opposed to, for example, a $9 headphone. So let's start off with the cheap headphone. First of all, I was actually surprised by the quality of this cheap headphone, as you know, songs listened to this headphone actually has everything included. You're just hearing what you're supposed to hear. It's nothing more, nothing less. In the bass department, it obviously will be lacking because the drivers in this headphone aren't very strong. But in terms of detailing and such, yeah, it simply lets you hear everything that's present in a recording. And when I'm listening to a lot of reviews or watching a lot of reviews on high-end headphones, they'll usually be telling you that a high-end headphone will let you hear things which you didn't hear before in a recording. And that's partly true, and we'll be coming back to that later when we'll be moving to the P9, but not exactly in the way that you thought it would be. So all in all, the build quality is obviously a lot less than a very expensive headphone, but in terms of just hearing a recording and hearing everything that's in it, with the exception of very low-end bass, obviously. A low-end headphone doesn't actually sound that bad, even for $9. So that isn't really the fault of the P9 as much as it is just that quality of headphones have been getting better the past few years. And even with low-end headphones, you'll be getting a very decent audio experience. So let's just move on to the QC35s. The biggest difference between $9 headphones and $300 headphones, in my opinion, is the added features. And in terms of sound quality, is the bass. What's usually happening with very low-end headphones is that they have weak drivers. So what happens is low frequencies are usually cut off, and bass-heavy songs, or in that case, most modern music, usually sounds very lifeless on these headphones. The audio is there, and you're not hearing any crack or something, but you're just not experiencing the very low bass which you could be hearing with a little bit higher end headphone. So with the Bose QC35s, the sound quality is, it's obviously better than with the $9 headphones. But the biggest difference between these headphones and this headphone is actually the bass response. So you're just hearing that a song has a lot more soul to it, because you're actually hearing all the frequencies which you were previously not hearing with this other headphone. But in terms of mids and highs, even after intensive listening, there is a difference between $9 headphones and $300 headphones, but the difference is, it's a little bit placebo, because you know that these headphones are more expensive, and it's a little bit more sharpness, or a little bit, voices, for example, are a little bit more prominent on these QC35s than on this $9 headphone. But if you were to give someone a blank headphone with no branding on it, and you would compare these two to each other, the average person would probably notice the difference in bass level the most between these two. So what you're paying for is obviously the added benefit of noise cancellation, which is a huge plus when actually going outside, and obviously the portable connectivity, as it has a built-in battery and it has Bluetooth, which this low-end headphone obviously doesn't. So now you know the differences between a $9 headphone and a $300 headphone. Let's move on to the $900 headphone, which is 100 times more expensive than the low-end headphone. And what I'm noticing the most, especially actually between these two and this headphone, is that the high-end P9 will actually will actually highlight some parts of songs which you actually didn't pay attention to in previous, in previous listens on lower end headphones. When listening to a song, for example, Something About Us by Daft Punk, you're really hearing background noise a lot better, background instruments, which are usually a little bit faded away on other types of headphones, are actually very clear on this P9. For example, a bass guitar, which is actually in the background of Something About Us, is subtly very prominent with this headphone. Whereas with the $9 headphone and even the QC35, it's present. And like I said before, this headphone has exactly the same audio as this headphone. But the prominence of these background instruments and just these fine details in songs are actually more highlighted by this headphone. Whereas they are present in this $9 headphone, but they're just in the background. If you don't listen to it, or you're not searching for these details, you will not hear them. It's just an unconscious thing. Whereas with this headphone, even if you're not looking for these details, the headphone will just point them towards you because they're just much more highlighted. And that's what I really noticed as the biggest difference between this headphone and these other headphones. Song highlights and background details are present in all three headphones. The $9 headphone and the $900 headphone will all have the same audio, obviously. This headphone doesn't create new audio when listening to a song. You're not going to hear a guitar where it wasn't present in this song. But what the P9 does as opposed to the other headphones is it just shows you the fine details in a song much more prominently than it would on the $9 headphone, even though in both headphones it's clearly hearable. And another thing which I noticed with the P9, which was a big reason why I liked it, is that it has a bit of coloring in the bass, obviously. It has a strong bass response. But it also has a very nice detail to it in bass. When you're hearing a bass guitar, like I said before, you're much more accurately hearing details of how the strings are going on the bass guitar, as opposed to the $9 headphone, which has trouble actually letting you hear these frequencies because it doesn't have the appropriate drivers. And the QC35s, which do have the same bass response as the P9s, but simply lack the fine details in these low bass notes, where it's quite difficult to actually, instead of just thumping bass, actually to hear a distinct bass sound, like from a bass guitar or from a synthesized bass note. So all in all, a $9 headphone isn't actually as bad as you might think, even compared to a $900 headphone. And I've compared these two, so I should know the difference by now. But the fine details are usually what makes the P9 a lot different than these other two headphones. The bass response is obviously better, especially than the $9 headphone. And also the details in bass notes are much more prominent than on these other headphones. Aside from that, slight details, like I said before, will be more prominent on the P9 than they will be on your QC35s or your $9 headphone. The details are present in all these three headphones, obviously, because you're not listening to a different song. But the P9 simply highlights them, so that's what makes this headphone kind of special. Is it worth the extra 891 dollars, as opposed to this $9 headphone? That's really objective, and that's why some people will say yes, it's worth the extra $900, and some people will say no, I'd rather have that money in my pocket. So all in all, that was my review of the P9 as opposed to these other two headphones. I hope you've enjoyed this video and liked my explanation of the differences between these headphones. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next videos. Thanks for watching and goodbye.